garbage, awful filler episode. Don't waste your time. 20 minutes of non-stop yapping and absolute nothing burger with details. We were told about this in the last episode. Complete waste of 20 minutes. Just skip this one. There's no need to watch it. No animation, an absolute nothing burger. Complete garbage episode. What's up everyone? In today's video we're checking out some of the 1-star reviews on the IMDB website for the latest Jujutsu Kaisen episode about the Hunger Games, which has 7.8 stars on the IMDb right now, which makes it the lowest of this season, which usually wouldn't matter because 7.8 is a good rating for an anime episode. But since it's Jujutsu Kaisen, which like for the first 2 episodes has 9.2, 8.8, it's a pretty big jump from 8.8 to 7.8. Now I know the IMDb ratings doesn't hold a lot of merit since it's just like fans that are like just giving their reviews of the show. But you know, I wanted to check out this specific episode because I want to see what some of the 1 stars are of this episode. So without further ado, let's check out the review. We'll start with our first one right here. I don't know if this guy's trolling or not because it is not a filler episode. You got so much backstory of how like the 6 stars and how like the Tengen were all like connected by fate, but Hoji destroyed that fate, which has now led to the Hunger Games. Also in this episode, I mean, yes, we were talking about the rules in the last episode that we had to pause, but for the characters, they were not told about the rules at all. Therefore, they had to go and, you know, figure out the rules in this episode. And the non-stop yapping is completely justified because for the first 2 episodes, all we had was mainly straight action. There was not a lot of yapping except maybe in the first with the whole Zenin clan. But like besides that, yeah, there was a lot of action. Therefore, we had to take a little break before we get into more action. No animation and absolutely nothing burger. If you want to see a scene where people just talk and there's no animation at all, I highly suggest you watch One Punch Man Season 3. Tell, don't show. One of the biggest problems JJK has always had is that instead of showing what happens, it just has a bunch of characters standing around explaining it to you. I had low expectations, but this is probably the worst episode yet. It exposes the weaknesses of the series, and it only gets worse from here. Okay, I can't say much on the last statement of it only gets worse from here because I don't read the manga, so that I have no idea. But yes, it is explaining it to us, but it's also explaining it to the characters. And I think it's kind of logical that, you know, the Tengen, she had to like show like the holograms because it's her room and she can show her own holograms in their own room. I think that's why it was shown that way because she couldn't put like a replay in like time of what happened before. So that's why I think that's why it did it like that, like how they explained the rules and like the past, they showed it like that. But this is probably the worst episode yet, which is totally fine. It's a totally fine opinion to have. But yeah, let's move on. Worst episode of all time. The whole episode is worse than the manga. After 2 opening episodes that grabbed attention with action and world building, this one slows down drastically. The plot feels like it's going in circles with long, uninspiring dialogue that doesn't really develop the character or story. Even the action scenes, though present, lack intensity and fail to make up for the sluggish pacing. Overall, the episode feels like a filler that kills the momentum built in the first 2 episodes, leaving the viewer more bored than engaged. Okay, I hope you mean worst episode in JJK, not an all of anime, because there's been worse episodes in anime. Anyways, let's move on. Now, when it comes to pacing, I feel like, yes, the manga did go by really quick, but I think for the anime, they wanted to make it a bit slower so you can fully understand all the information, because there was a lot of information, so, you know, they couldn't just, like, pace through it really quick and be like, okay, let's move on. We're, like, feeding you all this information, and you'd be like, wait, what just happened? They wanted to probably make it a bit longer so you can, you know, slowly get it. I mean, it does slow the pacing, but I think it was the best decision overall. Uninspiring dialogue that doesn't really develop the character or story. I think this develops the story a lot more. I think we started to realize how everything came together. Like, you know, with the whole like 6 eyes, you know, they were all like destined by fate until Toji destroyed it. That was a big change. That was a big thing to like for us to understand. Yes, there might not have been a lot of character development, but it's just 1 episode, and also the story, there was like a lot developed in the story in this episode. With what I mentioned before with the 6 eyes, you know, destined by fate with everyone. And then now what Yuta and like what everyone's gonna do, Choso and Yuki staying behind, Yuta is gonna join a region. Maki is gonna go back to the Zenin clan, and now I think Yuta and Megumi is gonna recruit Hikari, or I think that's how you say his name. So yeah, I don't know, I wouldn't say this is the worst episode of all time. Wow, I don't want to have to read the manga or watch a YouTube video to understand something. This is worst explanation in any social media I've ever consumed. I would rather watch Bullock Season 1 over and over, and only the parts where Ego is talking. I feel like I watched this, I devolved as a human. Okay, this is pretty dramatic. I don't think they would watch Bullock Season 1 over and over again with only Ego talking over this episode. That's pretty crazy. Anyways, if this is the worst explanation in any source of media you've ever consumed and you don't want to watch a YouTube video, then I guess you can't really continue on with the series. Like the way they explained, of course some people would not probably get it straight away. Therefore, you would want to watch a YouTube video to truly understand. Though I can see why that's a bad thing, because if the anime didn't explain it well for you, then you have to watch a YouTube video. I think that's completely fair because like not everyone's going to understand how to do a math equation the same. Like some people might have to figure it out a different way to understand the math equation. I don't know why I'm talking about maths. I just thought of that as the best way to explain, if you know what I mean. Anyways, let's move on. The worst episode on JJK. I can't even describe how bad that was. I don't want to see people standing in a room for 24 minutes. There was way too much information at one time. They should have gradually told us the information as the current game starts. I thought this episode was very weak. It was the worst episode. Thanks. Okay, for the plot, they had to stay in that room because it was Tengen's room, and then she couldn't leave that room, and she could explain everything in that room. Therefore, they had to stay in the room. I know it's probably not interesting to just look at the same scenery for like, the entire episode, but with the information that we were given and all the rules that we were taking, I thought that was pretty engaging and pretty nice to watch in the episode. But I do see a point on that. I wouldn't want to watch the same people stay in the same room for whole 24 minutes unless, you know, we were getting something good, which we did with the information, and also the music was slapping. Like, I can't lie, I know that's subjective right there, but I was bopping my head the whole time when the rules and the information of how to unseal Gojo was coming out. There was way too much information at one time, which is kind of fair because there was a lot of information for you to get in just one episode. But, you know, I feel like if they didn't do it in this episode, there would have been a part 2, and then no one wants to stay in that same room for 2 episodes. That would have been really, really bad decision from them. But yeah, thinking this episode was very weak, I mean, that's totally fine. I feel like, you know, probably was the weakest, okay? Weakest when it comes to JJK. No glaze, by the way. Weakest when it comes to JJ animation, the fight scenes are really cool. But this episode wasn't that weak. Like, you know, I'd say it's a 7, you know, maybe 7.5. For generous, I give it an 8, but that's maybe putting that at 7.5. It was totally fine. It was a good episode. I think above average because if they explained it really, like if they shown the animation really bad, and you know, I would have given it an average just because the information is cool. But since the animation was pretty cool, the music slapped, I'd say 7.5. And finally, overrated episode. The episode itself is not bad, but I don't like people who glaze this episode just to seem smart. I don't like the way that they explain a lot of information to one episode. If you think that an episode that just explains the rules of the current games, the goal of Kunjaku is one of the best episodes of anime, then you're either a geek or midwit or a delusional fan who hates all critics. And it's not that good either you understand or not. It maybe deserves 5 to 7 stars, but I don't want to have a 9.5 stars. Anyways, I am very disappointed to wait just for that. I knew there would only be dialogue, but I didn't know this information would take up so much space in the episode. Well, this episode had to take so much space because if not, then this episode would have been a part 2, as I said earlier, which no one wants to see. Now, I can understand where this statement's coming from. I don't like people who glaze this episode. I don't want this shit to have 9.5 stars because on the IMDB, if you check out the 10 out of 10 reviews, people are just saying like this is a great episode, and I'm thinking it was a good episode. Like 10 out of 10 episodes like that, those are really rare. Like either like for me, 10 out of 10 might be like when a climax happens in like an arc, or a plot twist maybe happened that was, you know, unexpected, or like was secretly like it was building up that, you know, the characters didn't realize, but we as an audience finally get to see it, so kind of a climax as well. Or something really emotional happens, like maybe a death, like a sacrifice, or a wholesome moment. It's like I can't think of any 10 out of 10 episodes in anime, but those are the things. Those are really rare because we should not be just saying everything is peak, even though I might say that sometimes as a joke, but not everything is peak, you know? So I do agree with this statement right here. It is not a 9.5. I do think it's a 7.5 overall. Just for like an episode, you know. But my opinion is not correct, you know. It's just what I think of the episode overall. When it comes to like giving ratings, it's like really hard because there's a lot of variables you gotta think about. Like, you know, the story, you know, how they adapt from the manga, how did the animation turn out, the music, and it was just so much stuff. So, you know, normally like I wouldn't think too much about that. I'll just give it like, I felt like a 7.5. So yeah. Anyways, that's it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed looking at some of the reviews with me. I'd say the most craziest one is this one right here. It was not filler. When I saw this one awful filler episode, I was like, okay, I gotta talk about this. Anyways, hopefully you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.